You remember the old version of you, the one that wanted so badly to be understood that you'd spend entire days rehearsing what to say, how to phrase it, how to soften your truth so it wouldn't threaten theirs. You'd drain yourself trying to prove your goodness, your value, your loyalty, hoping someone would finally meet you halfway with honesty. But all that ever got you was fatigue. You were handing out your energy like free samples, hoping to be chosen by people who had no intention of holding anything sacred. You blowed in places that applauded your silence. You spoke in rooms that had already made up their minds. And one day the truth hit you, not like a lightning bolt, but like a slow unraveling. Proving yourself was never going to earn you peace. Choosing yourself would. Now you move through rooms differently. You're not there to be liked. You're not there to be understood. You're there to observe, to sense, to decide. You don't extend access just because someone smiles right or says the words you used to fall for. You look deeper. You pay attention to what's behind the performance, the small slippages, the tension behind politeness, the patterns they think you won't notice. And when it doesn't align, you don't argue anymore. You don't lecture. You don't give warnings. You simply vanish. Disappear mid-sentence if you have to. Because choosing peace over presence is the sharpest move you ever learned. They don't even realize you're gone until your silence fills the space they use to manipulate. You're no longer interested in being everything for everyone. You used to think love meant giving your all, every time, even to people who handed you back nothing but confusion. You kept showing up, even when it hurt, because you believed loyalty would eventually earn clarity. But that's not how it works. You've learned now that being selective is not cruelty. It's wisdom earned through scars. You don't owe anyone access to the parts of you that took years to rebuild. If they didn't help you heal, they don't get to witness the after. And if they didn't respect your vulnerability, they don't deserve your presence once you've become whole. You've stopped auditioning. Now you let the room qualify for your time. Energy is your currency now, and you're no longer overspending. You don't attend every argument you're invited to. You don't rush to explain your silence. You don't feel the urge to clarify your boundaries to people who never respected them in the first place. You conserve. You study. You measure. And when you speak, it's intentional. When you stay, it's deliberate. And when you leave, it's final. Because you've grown tired of circles. Tired of being dragged into loops by people who confuse access with entitlement. You're not bitter. You're precise. You've learned that your energy is sacred, and where it goes, growth must follow. If all they bring is chaos, you leave. Quietly. Brutally. Without needing applause for doing what you had to do. You don't hate anyone. You simply stop feeding connections that starve your soul. You walk past people who once meant everything with the calm of someone who has finally forgiven themselves for staying too long. You stop hoping they'll change. You stop creating versions of them in your mind that never existed in reality. Instead, you start choosing yourself with the same loyalty you once gave to everyone else. That shift is internal and visible to most, but it radiates in how you move. You no longer chase closure. You no longer ask for explanations. You simply understand that some people were detours, not destinations. And now that you know where you're headed, you don't need distractions dressed as devotion. They feel it. They may not say it, but they feel your absence in their control. You used to be predictable, always the one to reach out, to resolve, to rescue. But now, you wait, you watch. You let them feel the weight of your absence and decide for themselves what it meant. You don't play the fixer anymore. You don't walk back into fires pretending you're fireproof. You've learned that your energy doesn't belong where peace cannot grow. And if that means walking alone through seasons of solitude, you do it willingly. Because silence for you has become sanctuary. And distance, that's your defense. It's the wall that protects everything you had to rebuild from the inside out. You've outgrown the need to be liked. Now you seek resonance, truth, depth. You don't care how someone presents. You care how they carry truth, how they show up when they're not getting their way, how they behave when no spotlight's on them. You choose people who honor your time, who meet your silence with respect instead of insecurity. You've learned the hard way that most people only respect boundaries when it benefits them. So now, you test for consistency, not charm. You listen more than you speak. And when someone shows you their truth, even if it's wrapped in sweetness, you believe it. Because choosing who gets access to you is no longer emotional, it's strategic. And that strategy is built on experience they'll never understand. You're not mysterious. You're just no longer readable to those who read with shallow eyes. They say you've changed. They say you're cold now. But the truth is, you've just stopped giving people the version of you that explains every move. You've made peace with being misunderstood. Because your job is not to make others comfortable. It's to stay aligned. And if your alignment makes others insecure, that's their reflection to manage, not yours. You've stepped into a level of power that comes from self-possession. You own your time. You own your triggers. You own your exits. And when you do that, you become someone who no longer begs for connection. You build it where it's earned. You don't operate on guilt anymore. Guilt used to be their favorite weapon. They'd say you were selfish for pulling away, disloyal for choosing distance. But now you know the difference between selfishness and self-respect. You don't fear being labeled anymore, because those labels only stuck when you needed their validation. Now that you've walked through the fire of your own transformation, nothing they call you holds weight. You choose what matters. You choose what gets your time. You choose where your presence lands. And that power, that autonomy, that's what they call venom. But you call it healing. And for the first time, you're not here to explain it. You're here to live it. They watch you, more than they admit, more than you realize. Not because you're loud, but because you're unreadable. Because while others unfold themselves for attention, you sit still in the corner of the room, detached yet aware, speaking less and seeing more. And that unnerves people. The more they monitor you, the less they understand. They analyze your tone, your patterns, your silences. But the blueprint they're searching for doesn't exist. You are not linear. You are not programmable. And in a world addicted to patterns and algorithms, that makes you a threat. You're not being observed out of admiration. You're being studied out of fear, because they can't figure out where to place you, and what they can't place, they try to control. You never announced your transformation, which is why they missed it. You didn't stage a breakdown or create a spectacle. You simply detached, disengaged, removed your reactions from circulation. Now you walk through the same rooms with a different frequency, one that doesn't seek permission to exist. They watch your every move trying to match who you are now with who you used to be. But there's no match to make. You burned the bridge between versions. And the silence you walk in now echoes louder than your past ever did. They run simulations in their mind trying to decode you, hoping your next move is something familiar. But you've evolved into a shape they've never seen before. You're no longer built to be interpreted. You're built to be felt. And that feeling disturbs their sense of control. What they fail to understand is that your unpredictability is not chaos. It's precision. You are aware of every move you make, every word you speak, every door you choose not to open. You're not impulsive, you're strategic. And yet, they confuse your calm with confusion. They mistake your restraint for weakness. That's their first mistake. They think silence is absence. But for someone like you, silence is where everything sharpens. Your quiet isn't an empty hallway, it's a laboratory. You study their behaviors while they perform. You take mental notes while they repeat themselves. And when they finally realize you're always 10 thoughts ahead, they start questioning their own clarity. Because you're not just hard to read, you're built that way. Surveillance becomes futile when the subject refuses to perform. That's what they're learning now. They can have the cameras, the eyes, the whispers. But if you don't give them patterns, they're left with paranoia. You don't update them on your progress. You don't share the chapters while writing them. You just show up with the finished book and a locked cover. And that bothers them more than any confrontation would, because they can't prepare for what they can't predict. You've taken away their control not through rebellion, but through autonomy. You stopped asking them to understand. You stopped waiting for applause. Now they stand behind glass, analyzing every move you make, yet drawing the wrong conclusions. Because you're not just doing things differently, you've become different. You used to hand people blueprints of yourself. You wanted to be known, understood. You gave them access, clarity, explanation. And they used it against you, weaponized your openness. So now you've become selective, not cold, intentional. You measure your energy. You ration your exposure. You let people wonder. Let them assume. Because the more they guess, the more they reveal themselves. Your mystery becomes the test. And they fail it repeatedly, because they still believe understanding you is the same as controlling you. But every time they try to box you in, you reshape. Every label they apply peels off. Every pattern they try to trace dissolves. Because you've rebuilt yourself in ways surveillance can't measure. Their obsession with clarity is their downfall. They want to know what drives you. They want to know what breaks you. But you no longer volunteer your weakness. You no longer display your hunger. You've learned how to feed without begging, how to grow in shadows, how to heal without broadcasting it. And now they panic because there's no longer a predictable reaction to provoke, no longer a narrative to hijack. Your calm presence becomes an unsettling mirror to their chaos. You don't show discomfort even when the fire burns inside. That restraint, that stillness, that's the weapon, because it forces them to project. They start revealing their own insecurities just to fill the silence you leave behind. This is where power lives, in unreadability, in being watched without being defined, in being monitored without being manipulated. You've built a presence that cannot be decoded because it wasn't designed for public consumption. It was designed for survival, evolution. You don't answer questions you don't respect. You don't explain things to people committed to misunderstanding you. And now, when they look at you, they see a wall where there used to be a window. They still try, still analyze, still whisper. But every conclusion they come to is based on who they were when they knew you, not who you are now. And that disconnect haunts them more than any revenge ever could. There's a difference between being private and being unreadable. You've mastered both. You've become fluent in presence without performance. You walk into rooms and alter the energy, not with words, but with weight. People shift when you arrive, not because you demand it, but because they feel something they can't define. That's the cost of studying someone like you. You might gather data, but you never find peace, because the subject doesn't respond the way you need them to. You can't punish them with silence. They choose it. You can't weaponize gossip against someone who doesn't need a reputation. And you can't control someone who is no longer reacting. They wanted a puppet. You became a puzzle. You didn't set out to be mysterious. You became it out of necessity, out of survival, out of knowing what people do when they think they understand you.